So I've been given a series of talks recently on topics different than narcissism, right? People asking me to talk about healthy relationships, surprise, love, repair. I enjoy it. I welcome it. In many ways, it's a counterweight to what I usually do. And it's been an interesting experience while I also research and review the most recent literature. And when I was talking about love and healthy relationships, doing that research, one theme that often came up was that of unconditional love. It's kind of an aspirational, idealistic concept that we actually treat as being realistically actionable. Now, unconditional love has its roots in a concept called unconditional positive regard. Carl Rogers, this is a humanistic principle that gets at valuing a human behavior beyond just their behavior. And there's all these things that compose unconditional positive regard. It's like acceptance without judgment, viewing the inherent worth in another person, that kind of thing. Some of you may have even heard of the concept of agape, which means selfless love. And that concept is very much tied into unconditional love. It's loving someone, it's almost like agape, maybe at closest we get. It's a spiritual space, maybe to some degree our kids, I don't know. It's a great concept, this idea of unconditional love in a higher order way, like that all people have value, and especially in childhood, if they're loved in this unconditional way, then the child is able to safely develop a sense of self, open up to their potential, and also recognize that even if they make a mistake, that's okay. They'll still be loved as a person. I mean, it sounds great to me, right? Well, this idea of unconditional love is really nothing short of a shit show when it comes to narcissistic relationships. And this idea of unconditional love can also be a massive driver of guilt for the person being harmed in the relationship. And for the narcissistic person, it can really drive an entitled expectation in a sort of one-way street. Hey, I want unconditional love. Listen, I love the concept of unconditional love. But it goes upside down in the kinds of relationships that I help people with. And because healing from narcissistic relationships and even just understanding them means being focused on behavior, right? That's what we focus on, behavior. Now, it may seem then that this doctrine of unconditional love means that you're supposed to value and love the narcissistic person regardless of how they behave. I don't recommend that. The fact is, you've actually already done that, or you're doing it right now. The problem is this: offering unconditional love or unconditional positive regard doesn't imply that a person will change because you're doing this, especially in adulthood. That's where things go off track with all of this unconditional love stuff. Now, in a narcissistic relationship, it's not that it is a bad thing to hold on to the concept of unconditional positive regard. It is an unhealthy thing if you think their behavior will change or the relationship will improve. And in fact, really understanding unconditional positive regard can actually help you separate the person from the behavior and recognize that the behavior is what is harming you, that you are not a bad person for recognizing that being near this behavior or affected by this behavior is harmful. I mean, I suppose perhaps you can have love and acceptance for them as a person, but even that seems like a bridge too far. But you're not signing off on their behavior. I get it feels like a disconnect because it kind of is. But survivors are often getting lost and twisting themselves up and trying to hate the narcissistic person in their lives. And it doesn't always work, right? You can't always get yourself to hating them. Some of you can. Some of you do. I know I have. But you can have this sense of unconditional positive regard, unconditional love, but also let them go. It's not easy, but you can do it. You can value the personhood, but step away from the harmful behavior. From a trauma-bonded perspective, I'll be honest with you, this can feel impossible. And frankly, when you are trauma-bonded, you almost feel as though you are in two different relationships, the awful one and what you think is the good one. Now, It is straight up, personally, I think, it is straight up self-harm. If you say, well, I am just going to tolerate their cheating and lying and gaslighting and manipulation and blame shifting and invalidation because that's just who they are and I love them. That is actually not what unconditional positive regard is. Everyone, by this argument, by the argument of this model, this humanistic model, everyone's a human being, even folks with really antagonistic and problematic personalities. This idea is then that the human being can be valued, but we should not approve of their harmful behavior. I mean, listen, using this logic, then a person should just keep approving of a child hitting their sibling or breaking things in the house or being mean to their peers and not ever going to bed on time. I mean, that's not how it works, right? You can love the child and address the behavior. In fact, done right, that's called parenting. Love the child, but got to address the behavior, right? Narcissistic people kind of love when they can kind of grab onto half-baked versions of things like unconditional positive regard or unconditional love as a one-way street. Listen, no narcissistic person is ever going to offer you unconditional love. The whole damn thing is a condition. But they do expect it for themselves. And that's why there is a lot of, if you love me, you would forgive me. If you love me, you would let this go. And the cherry on top is when they say they love you unconditionally. The fact is they don't. And why can't you do the same? In essence, narcissistic people kind of commandeer unconditional positive regard as a way to get you to sign off on their bad behavior. But that's kind of like a misuse of the terminology. To understand unconditional positive regard, it helps to understand conditional positive regard, which, trust me, you already understand it even if you don't know it in those words. Conditional positive regard is when we love or value someone only under certain conditions. It's a kind of an if-then statement. If you buy me this thing, if you buy me this gift, I love you. If you do the thing I need you to do, then I think you're great. If you get straight A's, then you're my best kid. If you have sex with me, then yep, I love you. But if you don't do the thing, get the straight A's, buy the gift, give the money, whatever it may be, then no regard for you. Now you're listening to this and thinking, oh, I mean, that's what the narcissistic people do, right? Yes, it is. But it's not just people who have these personalities who do the whole conditional love, conditional regard thing. To some degree, we're all a little guilty of it, right? And sometimes may even feel really guilty in our narcissistic relationships at times, feeling like, well, I like them on the good days, but I really don't like them on the bad days. I mean, I don't know that follows as a conditional regard, but sure, if you want to argue it to the end of the road. But it may be more fitting to say that you don't like their behavior on the bad days. You far prefer their behavior on the good days. But the thing that with the luxury we don't have is to just attach to separate parts of people, but God knows we try. And because we have to attach to all the parts of them, we'll often devalue ourselves for attaching to the unhealthy parts of themselves. And again, it all piles up because there's often a lot of unhealthy parts to narcissistic people. Remember, unconditional positive regard is an ideal. I don't even know that we ever fully get there. Perhaps we get closest with our children. Again, like I said, some people believe we might get there in spiritual spaces. But conditionality in relationships is pretty normal. I don't think that Carl Rogers meant that we were supposed to get to this unconditional space. It was just something to strive for. Now, this is all difficult because these relationships that are often affected by conditional regard aren't small relationships. They're your parents, they're your siblings, they're long-term partners, they're the parents of your children. In some cases, they're your children themselves. This isn't just a random person in the new book club you joined or the new friend that pissed you off. This is attachment, this is history, and it's connection. And no, we can't just turn off these histories and love and caring, even sense of belonging, even when someone keeps behaving in a manner that's unsafe and emotionally abusive for an extended period of time. But the mistake is when we say, well, I just need to not love them and forget it all. You can't do that. It's not a switch that we can turn on and off. But what we can take from all these big theoretical concepts like unconditional positive regard is that we can bear witness to another person as a human being, perhaps with worth and value and personhood. I mean, you can see I'm struggling with that myself. We don't have to dehumanize them or dismiss people out of hand, but we can, however, very realistically say that, okay, sure, this is a human being, this is a person, and their behavior is harmful, hurtful, betraying, manipulative, unsafe, and all around awful. We don't have to convince ourselves that they are bad. Instead, knowing their behavior, we can make a choice and release them. The challenge is that the narcissistic person, and frankly, the world around you, will paint you as being a bad person and being conditional because you're not willing to put up with their behavior. You're never going to win at that argument. Because if we get too down this rabbit hole, people, and already do, endure terrible relationships because they think they're dismissive when they push people off on the basis of behavior. But these kinds of ideals, like unconditional positive regard, can and often do get twisted and used as weapons against people who are living through emotional abuse. And then what happens is we see these paradigms like nobody is perfect, love means forgiving, love means acceptance. And then it is used to rationalize dangerous positions like, if you love someone, then you love their behavior, like it's a package deal. Hell no, no, it's not. The very definition of discernment is that you can have loving feelings and even see the complicated issues around value and worth, perhaps even occasional goodness in a narcissistic person you care about, and not have to twist them into something black and white, into an evil person in your head. But rather to see them as a person who, for a bunch of different reasons, behaves in a way that's harmful to you. So you can make your decisions about the relationships from like, but I love them and they're a person and that means they have value, but rather to say, this behavior is not changing and this behavior is not good for me. We harm ourselves when we feel we have to reduce a person we cared about or who was in our life in a significant way into an evil caricature. Concepts like unconditional positive regard, like I said, it's not, you don't get the concept in isolation. They're often part of these much bigger, robust theories like humanistic psychology. And when we pull out a single strand and try to simplify the complexities of the human heart, especially when it entails the opposing forces of love and abuse, we just can't do it. But survivors often feel that they have to go into dark spaces to make sense of their narcissistic relationship. You really don't. You can give yourself permission to recognize difficult or problem or harmful behavior for what it is and disengage. I just lived this yesterday. I worked with a person for a few weeks. I found them very difficult and invalidating and entitled during my first meeting with them. I found them very difficult and invalidating and entitled during my second meeting with them. They were pretty consistent, sort of textbook. But, sure, they're a human being. I can only bring my Romani-ness to it. I treated the person warmly, but I was remote. I was distant. I did not get into the mud with her, even when she was actively tossing insults at me. I wriggled out of the situation as quickly as possible, and I will not work with her or interact with her again. I have the agency and I have that option. It's not a family member. Would I sit here and tell you she's a bad person? No. But I will tell you this, I think she's a person whose behavior doesn't work for me. I don't see it working for anyone. And she's quite antagonistic. Would I say I have unconditional positive regard for her? Hell no. I'm not trying to be some kind of freaking humanistic saint. But I don't like her. But I also don't need to sell myself a narrative that she's an evil person. I just don't ever want to talk to her again. It's easy to do this when we don't know people as well. But we can witness and we can sort of witness a person's value and potential from a distance, but also decide not to engage with them. It's a lot harder when someone's been in your life for a while. These highfalutin concepts like unconditional positive regard really can get quite tricky and drive a fair amount of self-blame in narcissistic relationships. Understanding these concepts can actually help drive more holistic healing from these relationships. Like I said, I think it's a tall order, and I understand, like, again, a lot of the pushback we get in this narcissism work is like, you use words like them. It's not us and them. It's dehumanizing. You're using a label. So people want to get into those kinds of granular arguments. But I've encountered this enough. Likely many of you have encountered this enough. These are people you do not want to continue, whose behavior is like this. You don't want to keep continually dealing with it. Why? You know, again, to make some sort of humanistic point, I will say the people who do this, like, we can get along with them. They're just different. Either they've not been through this, they're massive enablers, and perhaps one day it will happen to them. And they'll scratch their head and wonder. You do not need to be their teacher. It's okay to disconnect from the person and behavior. Thanks again.